Jim burst through the reinforced door to Captain Amelia's office and locked it behind him, putting on an only partially vain show of panic. No need to fake the pounding of his heart or the nervous sweat on his brow. More flew laps around his head as Jim pretended to gasp for air, gathering himself for the most important performance of his lifetime. "Mutiny," he panted, letting his expression go wide-eyed and frantic. "Pirates! The rest of the crew! They're—" Jim broke off, breathing hard. Captain Amelia's feline face hardened into battle readiness, sharp as the precise lines of her uniform. No more words were needed. She made for the weapons locker in 3 quick strides, every move exuding grace, power, and purpose. "Pirates on my ship? I'll see them all hang," she said, her pointed ears moving to stand an aggravated attention. She armed herself and the doctor to moderate success, then tossed the smooth golden sphere that was the map to Jim. "Mr. Hawkins, defend this with your life." Jim scrambled to catch it, then stared down at the map sphere in his hands. "Well, that happened easy." The guilt twisted inside his chest as his eyes traced the intricate lines of the orb's surface. Captain Amelia trusted him so implicitly that she'd given it to him without a second thought, and he was about to betray that trust. A startling thud at the door sent all 3 of them whirling to face it. Outside, the sounds of shouting and pounding intensified, and a crackling sound preceded the smell of burning wood. They were right outside, cutting their way through, all according to plan. Jim reminded himself, stick to the plan. "No time for the hanging, I think, Captain," Jim said, stumbling over his words. "Are there life rafts or something? Do you have another way out of here?" "Of course I do. I always have a plan B," the captain said, and threw a glance at Dr. Dobler. "You won't like it, though." "Oh my. Well, in that case, perhaps we should." The doctor babbled, his dog-like ears flapping with his distress. But Captain Amelia paid him no mind, pointing her gun at the deck and pulling the trigger several times. A sparking hole appeared, just large enough to admit Dr. Dobler's long snout, and the captain holstered the weapon at her side. "Follow me to the longboats." Jim let the captain and the doctor go through first, then jumped down with Morph, following after, chittering his excitement. They were barely through the hole when the office door burst open to a chorus of cheers and shouts. Captain Amelia led them on a wild race through the ship's inner workings. Under pipes and over bits of jagged machinery, the sound of Silver's crew mocked, chasing them not far behind. "Part of the plan, part of the plan, part of the plan," Jim chanted to himself as the clamor of their pursuers drew closer. He feigned a few stumbles to slow them down, not wanting to get too far ahead of his new piratical allies. All he needed was for the captain and the doctor to reach the longboats ahead of him. One final turn, and they burst into the dock, panting and exhausted. Captain Amelia slammed the door shut behind them and shot the locking mechanism with her laser pistol. "To the longboats, quickly!" she shouted, pointing to a small boat dangling from a series of cables. Jim couldn't get there before her, though. He needed her in the boat first if any of this was going to work. He spotted her turning toward the big double lever that would open the docking bay doors below the suspended boat, and he jumped to cut her off. "I've got this, go," he said, wrapping his hands around the handle and pointing to the boat. "The doctor has no idea how to get that boat ready." "Good point," she said with a wry smile, and darted away, leaving Jim to heave at the lever with all his might. The door below the boat slowly began to retract with a series of grinding clanks as Captain Amelia somersaulted into the boat. Then the pirate crew burst through the door. Jim whirled to face the group, breathing hard as his muscles sang with adrenaline. Silver strode to the forefront of the group, coming face to face with Jim. After a heavy second, he detached a blade from his cybernetic arm and held it out for Jim to take. "Go on, Jimbo. Make the cut," Silver said with a solemn expression. "It's got to be you. Prove to the crew that you're one of us." The pirates made a big show of firing back at Captain Amelia and Dr. Doppler, but they stuck to the agreement. The captain and the doctor were to survive this encounter. Everything was going to plan. Jim took the blade from Silver just as Captain Amelia's voice rang out. "Mr. Hawkins, to me," she shouted, sighting down the barrel of a rifle. "I've got you covered." And there was a moment, a bare handful of seconds, where time seemed to stand still, and Jim saw the choices laid out before him. It wasn't too late. He could cut the ropes and jump into the longboat. He could take the map and make the leap, joining the captain and the doctor. He didn't have to go through with the plan. He wouldn't get the money from the trove right away, but they could always come back for it. But could his mother wait that long to rebuild the inn? It was her only livelihood, her life's work, and the thing that kept her going after Jim's dad had left. She needed it to survive, and ultimately, did he even want to wait? Jim looked to Silver for one last confirmation. The pirate gave the barest nod. Jim swung the blade in a wide arc, slicing through the first set of cables that held the longboat aloft. "I'm sorry. It's for the best," he called out to Captain Amelia and Dr. Doppler, unwilling to meet their eyes. "It's to keep you safe. I'll find you and pay you for the ship once we have the trove." Captain Amelia caught herself on the railing as the boat lurched under her, suddenly held aloft by only a handful of ropes. Her brows knit in confusion, and she called up to Jim again. "Mr. Hawkins, what are you—" He cut through the last of the cables before she could finish. The last thing he saw as the lifeboat fell away were Captain Amelia and Dr. Doppler's astonished, upturned faces locked on him. The pirates gathered behind him, Jim, and cheered as the longboat's sails caught and its engines fired, carrying it and the last obstacles blocking them from Flint's Trove, far into the blackness of space. Jim watched its sails until they were too far away to see, his heart aching. He'd save them. They would be okay. A bloodless mutiny. Well, bloodless except for Scroop. The flash of the shot, the sound of Scroop hitting the deck, the curl of smoke. That image would be burned into his brain for a long, long time. Was that the sort of thing Jim would have to do if he continued to walk this path? Was there an option to be a pirate who didn't kill people? Who stole only for those who truly deserved it? But Scroop did deserve what he'd gotten. He did. Jim would keep repeating it to himself until he believed it. The rest of the crew retreated back to the main deck to prepare for landing, chattering excitedly, all but Silver, who stepped up next to Jim, with Morth perched on his shoulder, watching the stars pass beneath them through the open bay doors. They both let the long silence hang between them, leaving space for the clamor of the crew, celebrating their victory. Jim barely heard any of it, his eyes still locked on the spot where Captain Amelia and Dr. Doppler had disappeared. And Silver's words from the night before ringing in his ears. "You gotta take the helm and chart your own course. Stick to it, no matter the squalls. When the time comes, you get the chance to really test the cut of your sails and show what you're made of. Well, I hope I'm there, catching some of the light coming off ya that day." And there they were, side by side. Jim had charted a course he never would have imagined even a day before. The guilt was like a crushing weight in his chest. Seeing Captain Amelia's easy faith in him shattered had changed something fundamentally inside Jim. And yet, there was something shining through the cracks too. Something light and free and burning for adventure. The part of him that would soon hold a legendary treasure, present it to his mother, sweep away all her problems, and secure a future of some sort for himself too, one of his own choosing and making. "You're something special, Jim," Silver said in a low voice breaking the silence. "You're going to rattle the stars, you are." More empty words, or truth this time. Words worth staying for? Worth choosing this life for? Well, maybe he'd stay. maybe he'd go in the end. Either way, he was free to make his own choice. Yeah, I am, he agreed. I'm gonna be my own man. Watch me. Silver laid a warm paternal hand on his shoulder and gave him a pat, then left him to his thoughts, shouting orders at the retreating crew to prepare them for docking at Treasure Planet. Adventure awaited, excitement, riches, a new life maybe. I'll never be what you want me to be, he murmured, thinking of his mom, his long gone dad, and of Silver too. But I'm still here, alive and ready, and making his own destiny. His hands danced over the surface of the golden map sphere in his hands, unlocking it by instinct until the seams lit with green light and burst forth, projecting the map of the universe against the backdrop of vast empty space. The whole of infinity laid out before him. Jim smiled, cupping the universe in his hands. And that is the end of Rattled the Stars. You know, as much as I love pirate stories, this one was pretty awesome, and I like how they twisted it. Join me next time on the next Read Aloud. See you real soon.